What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And boy, am I excited for this week. We are getting into Thanksgiving, which is one of the best times of the year for sports, both professional and college. You have NFL Thanksgiving games. We have the new Black Friday game. It's college football last week of the regular season, so it's rivalry week. We're going to see rivalry games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all up and down. And it's an exciting time. And obviously, everybody's going to be sitting down and watching football. But that's not what we're talking about today. I think the most fun part of this week, I'm a big football fan, is Feast Week in college basketball. It's really a week and a half now with all the extra tournaments they're doing. And in between your football watching, during your football watching, on the days there is no football, like Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the Friday where there's only one NFL game, everybody needs to be watching college basketball because there's some great tournaments, some great out of conference matchups. And as I said, it's one of my favorite weeks for all of sports all year in Feast Week, just for the basketball. Highly recommend you get multiple monitors and have one dedicated to watching all the action across the multiple networks. So without further ado, we're going to get into Feast Week. I did not pick all of the tournaments. There's a lot of tournaments, but do you really care about a Southern Conference team playing against a Big Sky team? And I don't even know if that's a matchup, but my point is I tried to pick the ones that the eight, what I think are going to be the eight best tournaments. So here we go. I'm going to just give you a summary here. I'm going to call this the best of Feast Week. Some of these tournaments start the Thursday before Thanksgiving, and all of them will end the Saturday or Sunday after. So again, it is more of a week and a half than it is a week. But here you are. Maui Invitational, Battle for Atlantis. Those two are always high at the top of the list. They're always good tournaments. They're going to be this year. We have a new tournament in the Players Era Impact Festival Impact Tournament. Long name. It's a first year, brand new year of the tournament. I had it third originally in my college basketball preview. It's moved up to second. It's an NIL. It's an NIL tournament in a way, so there's going to be NIL earned for all these players. It's going to go right back to them. That tournament's very interesting. We'll talk more about it later. Then we have another Bahamas, the Baha Mar Championship, the Charleston Hoop Classic, the lowest rated of the 14 of the 8 team tournaments. Then we have Rady's Children Invitational, ESPN's event Invitational, and the Legends Classic. Here you go. This is all the teams summarized, where they're playing, and what the name of the tournament is. Well, not all of them have where they're playing, but so here we go. I'm going to count down from 8 to 1, and we're just going to go over all these tournaments. We're going to go over the brackets. We're going to talk about different things in the tournaments. That way, it's kind of like your viewership guide, so you can know what you're watching and see as much of this as possible. Because again, I think everybody needs to go out and be watching these tournaments. Tournament number 8, the Legends Classic, November 21st through in November 22nd. That is the Thursday and Friday before Thanksgiving, the week before. It's in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. Here you go. I have the teams power ranked here. I think Texas Tech is the best team. Texas second best. Syracuse, and then I think St. Joseph's is good this year. I don't think they're on a level with those teams. My most compelling matchups. There's only 4 teams, and honestly, I don't think St. Joseph's, I don't want to disregard them. They're probably a top 100 team, but there's a difference between the top 100 team and a top 20 team or a top 40 team, which is what I think the other 3 teams, well, Texas and Texas Tech definitely are. Syracuse might be, even though they started slow this season. So my most compelling matchups, I think Texas Tech, Texas, that's hands down the most compelling matchup. That would be the championship game. Texas and Syracuse, I think, is interesting, and Texas Tech and Syracuse. So really any game that's not St. Joseph's. Maybe St. Joseph's proves me wrong. I'm sorry to all of my Philly people out there. I know that's one of the schools, but I think this tournament could have been a little bit stronger with a different 4th team. But the A10 is a solid conference, which we'll talk more about as we go through the tournaments. Players to watch here. This it is ordered, and obviously this won't at the end be exact. But this is me personally, some of the guys that I'm interested in watching in this tournament. I try to pick at least one from every team, and that'll be the same for all of the tournaments. So for all the tournaments, keep in mind I'm trying to pick at least one guy to every team, give every team the love they deserve. JT Toppin, you've heard of Obi Toppin. He was incredible at Dayton. JT Toppin at Texas Tech. I think that's all I kind of really have to say. If you watch college basketball, you should know JT Toppin. Even though Texas Tech sometimes doesn't get the love that they deserve, they usually have some good players. I really, really like J.J. Starling for Syracuse. He is the guy there. He was great last year. He's a very athletic guard. He's very good at getting to the rim. I think for Syracuse, it's who else is going to come and help him. And it has to be the guy that's number 7 on this list, Eddie Lampkin. He's one of their down low players. He can play in the paint a little bit, rebound. And I think the attack for Syracuse has to start with those two if they want to pick up a big non-conference win here. For Texas, they have 2 guys on the list as well, Trey Johnson and Arthur Kaluma. Those are the guys that have to score for them, especially Trey Johnson. And then for St. Joseph's, I put Xavier Brown. He's a Philly guy playing for a Philly school. Sometimes that means it means a little bit more for you. You know, you stay at home, go to school at home. You're playing for one of the schools in your hometown. So Xavier Brown's a pretty good scorer, even though not just for A10 standards. I think he's going to find a way to score. He might even drop a 20 bomb, 25 points on at least one game. They're guaranteed 2 games in this tournament. Everybody is. So I'd keep an eye on Xavier Brown, kind of a mid-major scorer there, and I want to see how he does against some bigger programs. My favorite player in this, even though I have him number 8, because maybe he doesn't always bring the offensive prowess as some of the other guys on his team, I'm really, really interested in Darian Williams from Texas Tech. He is a phenomenal defensive player, and I really, really want to see Darian Williams against some of the best, against some of the guards in this tournament that do love to score and are good scorers, are Power 5 scorers. So I'm really looking forward to watching Darian Williams. I think he can score a little bit, but he doesn't need to on this Texas Tech team. Texas Tech as a team plays good defense, and I think he is the spearhead of their defense with his elite perimeter defending ability. Here you go. Here's the bracket. As you can see, all these games are on ESPN affiliated networks, and most of the Feast Week tournaments will be. So you can just kind of leave ESPN on. How do I see this bracket shaking out? I think Texas Tech wins. I think Texas Tech is going to be the champion. I think Texas and Syracuse both could beat them. I think they're going to get Texas, and we're going to have an in-state battle. It is not a Big 12 battle anymore. For most of the time in these tournaments, they try and get teams from different conferences, and Texas is now in the SEC. Texas Tech is still in the Big 12. So this is 4 different conferences. It's getting a little bit harder to get a whole bunch of major teams from different conferences with all of the conference realignment that's happening, but I think this is a Texas Tech championship with Syracuse and St. Joe's playing for 3rd place. Although if Syracuse beats Texas, that'd be a big non-conference win for them in the ACC. I think the ACC, they have spoiler alert for later on, they have 8 teams playing in these tournaments, 1 in every tournament we mentioned, and they desperately need some of the teams to pick up wins because the ACC in past years, I think, has been good, but they haven't been getting a lot of non-conference wins, at least important non-conference wins, and that's been hurting the conference. The Big 12 and the SEC haven't seemed to have those issues, so I'm a little bit less worried about Texas and Texas Tech, but I digress. I think Texas versus Texas Tech is the championship, and I think they finish in the order that I have them in the power rankings. Moving on to number 7, the ESPN Invitational from Kissimmee, Florida. It's really Orlando if you're not familiar with Florida. It's at Disney at the ESPN Worldwide of Sports. They've been doing this tournament for a couple years now. This is an interesting tournament because I think Florida and Wake Forest are the 2 best teams, and they're playing each other in the first round. So they can't finish 1-2 like the last tournament. Most compelling matchups is anything without Wichita State. Wichita State with Shaka Smart was really, really good. They even went up to the American Athletic Conference. Wichita State had a good program there for almost a decade, maybe closer to 5 years, I guess. You remember the Fred VanVleet, Ron Baker days, but Wichita State was a fun team to watch. They're not that same team anymore. I think they're trying to get back there. For them, they have to get a good coach that knows how to recruit and attract players to Wichita. But I don't see them being that team this year, and Minnesota's not that great of a team either, but I think that they're going to have enough to get by Wichita State. But I think Florida Wake Forest is the big matchup here, and you're guaranteed to get it no matter what because they play in the first round. And then Minnesota, I'm very interested in for one reason and one reason only, and that brings us to our players to watch. Dawson Garcia is a phenomenal player. Uh, on other teams, he may not have as gaudy as numbers, but he would still be incredibly good. There's a lot of teams that could probably use a Dawson Garcia type player. He's a great scorer, great rebounder. I think personally he could be an elite defender as well, even if he isn't all the time. I really, really like Dawson Garcia as a player. I think he's averaging 25 a game this season or something crazy. I have him on my preseason Big Ten list, and he should be. The problem with Minnesota is they really realistically have nobody behind Dawson Garcia helping them. They have nobody but Dawson Garcia, so it's kind of a one-man team, and one-man teams hard to consistently win games, especially if they have an off game, and I don't think Dawson Garcia is going to be able to beat Florida and Wake Forest alone. Here you see I have 4 guys from Florida on this list, which kind of tells you how I think Florida is compared to the rest of these teams. I think Florida's a little bit more balanced. Walter Clayton's going to score for him. Will Richard has been a good scorer for him going back to last year. You have a guy like Elijah Martin. Anybody know? Anybody know where Elijah Martin came from? What school he came from? I'll pause for a second. Throw a little trivia question in there. Elijah Martin came from the. I'll give you a hint. He transferred. I'm sorry. I should have been giving you a hint there. He came from FAU. This is his 5th year. This is his COVID year, I guess. He's a grad student. Remember that FAU team that shocked everybody and made the Final Four? Yes, Elijah Martin was one of their best players, and now he's at a high major school in Florida in the SEC. Very interested to see how Elijah Martin playing in the SEC plays out this year for a guy with his experience. And again, he's a pretty good scorer. Not going to have to score as much with Florida. So I'm really interested in these 4 Florida guys, seeing how they play together, seeing who, if any of them, ends up being the dominant scorer. And then for Wake Forest, Hunter Sallis was one of the best players in the ACC last year, and he's back this year. Their coach, Mr. Forbes, as I call him, always seems to have a really good guard the last couple of years. You think about a guy like Alondas Williams. Wake Forest right now has a way of getting these transfer portal guards and turning them into great players. And don't forget, Hunter Sallis was a former 5-star recruit. Efton Reed, another guy that's in Wake Forest, but not on this list, is the 5-star recruit. So they have talent on the roster. Wake Forest can be good. I think they're a little bit thin. And then somebody like Cam Hildreth, who's been at Wake Forest for a while. He's a good shooter. He's a pretty good scorer. Little bit not as great on the defensive end. So we'll see. I think Wake Forest might have the best player, but or the second best player. My bad. Dawson Garcia is the best player, but between Florida and Wake Forest, the teams I think have a best chance at winning. I think Hunter Sallis might be the best player, but I think Florida is much deeper, and so it'll be interesting to see how those two styles compare. As you can see here, this whole tournament's also on ESPN networks. I think the winner of Florida Wake Forest wins the whole thing. I think the loser takes 3rd. Which means I think Minnesota is beating Wichita State solely on the strength of Dawson Garcia. So I think Florida is a little bit deeper, and I think that helps them win. But I think this Florida Wake Forest game could be really close down to the wire. So I'm going to go Florida, Minnesota, Wake Forest, Wichita State as the finishing order in this tournament. Moving on to the 6th place tournament, the Rady's Children Invitational in San Diego, California. It's Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday. And as you can see, there's some pretty big teams in here. Some teams that had some good success in the tournament last year. And from 4 of the 5 best conferences in basketball. So this seems like it's going to be a pretty good tournament. The first tournament we're talking about without a mid-major team. My most compelling matchups. I don't need to read off the power ranking every time. You guys can see it. I mean, obviously Purdue is first. They have come out the gate pretty well this year. Most compelling matchups. Purdue versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss hasn't scored a whole lot of points this year. Sometimes, at least in my opinion, they haven't scored as much as I think they have. But Purdue loves to score under Matt Painter. They're usually a pretty quick-paced team. I think Ole Miss versus Purdue could be pretty fun. Maybe even turn into a track meet. Purdue BYU, that's just another. I don't think BYU is the same class as Purdue. But BYU is a solid team. They should be hanging around the top 25 every year. They're in a good conference. BYU will be interesting to watch, although they have lost their head coach, so maybe that hurts them a little bit. You can see I don't have a lot of NC State love in here. I just think they lost a lot of players, and that's concerning from that surprise Final Four team. But I want to see what happens because Purdue and NC State played each other in the Final Four last year, so I think it would be interesting to see a rematch of that, even though both teams have lost significant pieces from those teams. Players to watch. Well, I have 3 from Purdue, and all 3 of them are good scorers. Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith are back from prominent roles last year. They're both good shooters. Kaufman Wren is kind of more of a low post player to me, but I want to see who continues because Purdue's already played 2 big games this year. I want to see who finally takes over the role as the guy for Purdue. I think they have depth this year, but they don't have a Zach Edey, and you don't actually need a Zach Edey, but you need somebody that the buck stops with, and I'm interested to see who it is between those 3 guys. Igor Demine, great name, great score for BYU. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on his shoulders, I think. I think he's going to have to score a lot of points for them to beat good teams. Not saying he doesn't have help, but he doesn't have as much help as I think I would like to see from a BYU team. Jaden Taylor for NC State. Him and Ben Middlebrooks are really the 2 guys left in NC State that played significant time on that NCAA tournament team last year. So I will be interested to see if Jaden Taylor can be that dominant guard scoring that they've had from guys like Terquavion Smith last year. They usually have a guard that can score. I think Jaden Taylor honestly could be a triple-double threat some games. He's a pretty good rebounder. He can pass the ball, make some plays. I would be watching him. I think he needs to step up and be NC State's best player this season. Sean Padula for Ole Miss, the Virginia Tech transfer. He was good at Virginia Tech, scored a lot of points. He's still a good scorer, a good shooter, and I'm interested to see how his career progresses at Ole Miss. And then also his teammate Matthew Morrell also needs to do a little bit of everything for Ole Miss in my eyes. But this is a pretty interesting tournament. Like I said, the first between 4 large conference schools with no mid-majors. I have this Purdue, and then I have Mississippi winning, or Ole Miss, as they say. And then I think Purdue's the clear and away the championship favorite. I think they should win it if they play to their capability. I think Ole Miss comes in second. And then I think NC State Brigham Young is the most intriguing third place game of the tournaments we have so far. I think that game could be super, super close. I lean BYU just because I think NC State has a couple more question marks, but I would not be shocked at all if NC State finds a way to win a game in this tournament. Moving on to number 5, the Charleston Hoop Classic. We get into our first 8-team tournament, and as you can see with 18 tournaments, I have more compelling matchups because it's 8 teams, and I also have more players to watch because there's 8 teams. I think Miami is the best team in this tournament. VCU, I think, could be really, really good this year. I really, really like VCU. They might be one of the best mid-major school. They could be the best mid-major school in the country this year. Nevada is pretty good, representing the Mountain West. And there is SEC, Big 12, and Big East teams, but they're arguably the worst teams in their conference. Vanderbilt's going to be bottom 3, bottom 4. Oklahoma State might be the worst Big 12 school. They're definitely bottom 3. And Seton Hall is off to an awful start. If I remember correctly, as of this recording, they have not scored over 60 points in any game this season, what should be very alarming, especially when you're playing your cupcakes at the beginning of the year. I did forget to mention that this tournament is weird. It is the Thursday and Friday, the week before Thanksgiving, and then they take off Saturday and play Sunday. Find that to be very interesting. Maybe they wanted a better TV window and didn't want to be up against college football on Saturday. And then I have Drake in this tournament. Drake is really good. They actually have a quite good player too. I know they lost some of their guys off of that tournament team last year. I still think Drake is very good. They seem to have a pretty good mid-major program. So Drake could it's very, very possible that they win a game. I don't think 3 is in the question because I think they got kind of screwed with their first round matchup. But Drake 100% could win a game and potentially two. I think the most compelling matchup is Miami Nevada, just because I think that's a potential championship matchup between two good teams. Um, Miami's definitely thinks they're a top 25 tournament team. Nevada thinks they're a tournament team. Nevada VCU would be fun because it would be a battle of the A10 and the Mountain West, kind of the two best, in my eyes, two of the best non-power conferences. They might be the best. I guess you have to put in the West Coast Conference there. And then VCU Drake, true mid-majors. That would be the battle of great mid-major teams. Those are always incredibly fun to watch. Miami Drake, that is a guaranteed matchup. That is the first guaranteed matchup on this list. And it would be so that's a first round matchup, which is why I feel bad for Drake. But Miami versus Drake, kind of Drake going to measure who they are against a team that's supposed to be good. And then again, Miami, VCU against anybody. I'm really just interested to see how VCU matches up with any of these power conference teams, whether they're good or not. And then I want to see where FAU is this year. FAU Oklahoma State, I believe, is a guaranteed matchup, which is part of the reason why it's on here. I gave a little bit more weight to guaranteed matchups because you're going to get them. But yeah, I Oklahoma State, not very good, trying to rebound. The FAU took a step up to the American Athletic Conference last year, and I don't think their roster is as good as it has been the last 2 years. The Final Four run, they made the tournament last year, so I'll be watching by closely. And then again, this is honestly just a test of where do some of these mid-major programs that have high hopes match up with some middling or not as good power conference teams. Really see where that gap is. Players to watch. We got two VCU players on here. We're going to talk about them together. My number one player to watch is Joe Bamisel. I can never say his name right. I practiced this for like 10 minutes before recording, and I still can't get it right. So forgive me. It looks like it should be Bamisile. And then Max Shulga from VCU. Both of those guys, I want to see how Bamisile, great score, and I want to see how he looks against power conference opponents. Yeah, it's one thing to go and score in the A10 and score against some of your cupcakes. How do you score against bigger and better schools? That's what I want to see. Kind of the same thing for Max Shulga as well. He's kind of the secondary guy there. I also want to see how they are defensively. Bennett Sturts for Drake. I'm giving a lot of mid-major love, and it's because there's a lot of good mid-major players in here. Bennett Sturts is going to be the guy for Drake this year. He has to be the guy for Drake this year. You can see VCU and Drake both have two guys on here at the top and the bottom of the list. They kind of bookend the list. That's for good reason. You're going to get some really, really good mid-major teams, some really good mid-major players, and I highly recommend you tune in and see VCU and Drake for a couple of games. Abu Osman for Oklahoma State. He's really their best and only player. A lot is on his shoulders, so when you're watching Oklahoma State, if you watch Oklahoma State, definitely need to watch out for him. We got a pair of guards from Miami. Nigel Pack has been in Miami for forever. It feels like for 10 years. Good scorer. He usually leads that team. He always a couple assists a game, scores double digits, keeps that offense moving. Really interested in Jalen Blackman. I was just talking about some mid-major guys. Jalen Blackman was a mid-major guy last year. He's starting shooting guard for them. He was almost a 50-40-90 guy, shot 40% from three, shot 90 plus, shot right around 90% from the free throw line. He doesn't rebound, he doesn't assist, but he can absolutely score, which is what Miami needs him to do. Elite scorer at Stetson University in Florida last year. Dad played at Kentucky. He's from Indiana, had some interest from those schools, but ultimately went to Miami. This tournament, I think, is going to be his first test to see just how good of a scorer he can be against high major teams. And we'll see if he passes it or not. He led Stetson to their first NCAA tournament in school history last year by scoring 40-something points in the ASUN championship game when it mattered the most. So very interested to see how Jalen Blackman translate against some better schools because I don't think Miami's really played anybody this year. Nick Davidson for Nevada. Familiarity there. He's a typical Mountain West guy. I always like seeing how these Mountain West guys do against a little bit better opponents. McLaughlin, Devin McLaughlin for Vanderbilt, all name team. How is McLaughlin going to be at Vanderbilt? Vanderbilt is obviously a power conference and not very good, but Devin McLaughlin is coming from another power conference with a team that's not very good in Boston College. So I'm interested to see how that works out. And I'll one more. Chauncey Jenkins, Seton Hall's best scorer, really their only scorer. How can he pick it up for this tournament? And Caleb Glenn is FAU's best player. If FAU wants to capture any of the magic they used to have, he needs to be standout for them. Here you go. You see the tournament. Like I said, I think the four best. I know I had the teams power ranked, and part of that's just the non-conference bias things. But I think as a pure team, Drake is really good. I think Miami is better than them. I think Miami should be the favorite and should win this tournament. But VCU, I think VCU is definitely beating Seton Hall. That I think Nevada beats Vanderbilt. That VCU Nevada game is incredibly compelling. The winner would most likely face Miami. Oklahoma State FAU, I'm not really loving. I think whoever wins the first game loses to the winner of Miami Drake. I think Drake picks up a win or two. I think Seton Hall is my favorite pick to finish last right now. They just have not looked good under Shaheen Holloway, at least this season. But I think the top three, the top three favorites here should be Miami, Nevada, and VCU. So those are the teams I would look out for. And obviously Drake is always fun. We love a true mid major. Moving on to the Baha Mar Hoops Bahamas Championship. Another Thursday, Friday, a week before Thanksgiving and Black Friday tournament taking place in the Bahamas. This is a big tournament because you got Baylor, a top 10 team with a huge freshman, St. John's, who's playing much better with Rick Pitino. They look like they could be a really good team. Tennessee don't have Dalton Knecht anymore. They still have Rick Barnes. They still have a lot of good pieces. And Virginia, who is a massive question mark without Tony Bennett, and really only one player that is jumping out at you. Most compelling matchups, anything without Tennessee or anything without Virginia. Even with Tony Bennett, I wouldn't have Virginia on the list. I hate the way they play basketball. It's been successful for them, but it's so ugly and hideous. A credit to them for playing good defense, although sometimes I think they would just foul people and say the refs couldn't call them all. And they had a reputation thing about Virginia plays good defense and doesn't foul, so they got away with more than some other teams do. That's just my opinion. Virginia basketball is ugly, though. I hate watching teams sit on the ball. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes whatever, but like it feels like I just hate watching Virginia basketball. So even with Tony Bennett, I wouldn't encourage people to watch it. But Baylor versus Tennessee, I think is and Baylor versus St. John's. Both of those matchups are incredibly intriguing. Baylor is going to play St. John's, that's guaranteed. But Baylor is the best team, so anything with them I would watch. And St. John's and Tennessee are both ranked, so you can't really go wrong there either. So let's move over to the players to watch. RJ Luis, however it's pronounced. That's not one of the ones I practiced coming in or before recording. But RJ Luis for St. John's, elite scorer. That's really what he's out there to do. Rick Pitino has had a couple of those in his days. Anytime you have a big score, it's fun to tune in and watch. And St. John's could be a fun team. The more I look into them and the couple games I've seen from them this year, I'm regretting putting them as low as I did. I don't know. I put them fourth, and Marquette and Creighton are still really good, but they could definitely challenge for a higher standing in the Big East this season. And it's going to be largely on the shoulders of RJ Luis. Isaac McNeely, the only player from Virginia that's worth mentioning and paying attention to. He's their head scorer. Obviously, to play at Virginia, you have to play good defense. He's been there for a while. He's a veteran with experience. And again, he's the guy that they have to score. I mean, he's averaging 16, 17 a game. And when Virginia only scores what feels like the 50s, maybe low 60s, that's a large percentage of your points coming from one person. So watch out for Isaac McNeely. It's like Kai Ziegler for Tennessee. He's another guy I think that's been at Tennessee forever. A veteran guy, was on the team last year. Point guard, didn't have to do a lot of the scoring. He a little bit more on his shoulders from a scoring perspective. And another guy from Tennessee, we talked about the ASUN earlier with Miami. We're going to talk about Tennessee. Chaz Lanier from North Florida. Dynamite scorer. He is a microwave. He can absolutely shoot the ball. There were some games last year where he would hit a lot of threes with not a lot of attempts. Like he can get hot from the 3-point line in a hurry. Can he be the same shooter at Tennessee and help them score as he was at North Florida? He averaged over 20 a game at North Florida last year. He doesn't need to do that for Tennessee, but I just want to see how much of that shooting ability translates over. I'm going to talk about Simeon Wilcher, the 8th player. Then we'll get into the guys from Baylor and the middle there. Simeon Wilcher was a guy, major conference offers, places like North Carolina and a couple other big schools. He opted to go to St. John's. He's, I think, their second or third leading scorer. He's a point guard. I think he needs to step up and score a little bit more than he currently is, even if it's like a bench role from Luis. And I think that could unlock a lot for St. John's. Simeon Wilcher continuing to take a step forward this year. Now let's get to the 3 Baylor guys: Norchad Omier, VJ Edgecombe, and Jaden Nunn. Norchad Omier. Actually, let's start with VJ Edgecombe. Top 5 recruit in the nation. Supposed to be an NBA lottery pick. Little bit of a slow start, in my opinion, to this season. I don't think it's going to stay that way, obviously. But can he get going? Can he use some big-time games against big-time opponents to get going? And I think if he can, the results will be very good for Baylor. Obviously, when you bring in these guys, you need them to play well. So, and again, Norchad Omier isn't scared. I mean, he's been in the ACC, or VJ Edgecombe, sorry. He's not going to be scared of big-time players. He was playing against big guys in high school. It's just a step up at college and we'll see. Norchad Omier, I just kind of spoiled it. He came from Miami. He's averaging a double-double right now. He needs to be big for them. He was great at Miami last year until he got hurt. He's a guy that can step out and make the 3 if asked. He's in the mid 30%, at least he was last year. He needs to rebound. He needs to be a contributor. And I think he's doing that for Baylor so far this season. But I want to see really, and I guess I should get into Jaden Nunn. Another fantastic player. He's averaging 13. He's right in line with where Norchad Omier has been. Another guy that transferred in from VCU. VCU is already really good. Imagine if they had Jaden Nunn. I mentioned these 3 Baylor guys as new pieces: Edgecombe, Omier, and Nunn, because they're all new to the team this year. Baylor does have some guys. They also have like Jeremy Roach that's new. I think Baylor is going to be one of those teams that has so many new pieces that it's going to take a little bit for them to get going. It's been a couple of games. They got blown out by Gonzaga early on, and then they picked up a ranked win the very next game. So for Baylor, it's just about all of these pieces coalescing, figuring out who the scorers are, who does what, who the shooters are, all of those type of things. And I think Baylor's slowly starting to work on that. And I think these 3 guys need to play a pivotal role in some of those things. Here you see the bracket. You have Baylor versus St. John's round 1. Those might be the best 2 teams. St. John's and Tennessee I have very, very close. And then Tennessee, Virginia, that's going to be a defensive war. Rick Barnes always plays good defense. Virginia right now is still modeled after the Tony Bennett era, so they're still going to be playing defense. That's going to be a low-scoring matchup. And Baylor St. John's, I think, could be a very high-scoring matchup. So you kind of have these games could be like battle of styles. I'm going to go with Baylor to win it all, St. John's to win third. All of these teams should be good, especially everybody but Virginia should be a top 25 team, should be there pretty much the whole year. And Virginia should be flirting with the tournament even without Tony Bennett. So you're going to have some good quality opponents here playing each other. And as you can see, this is the first and I think only one that is on CBS, not ESPN. So if you're looking for it on ESPN and you can't find it, it's because it's on CBS. Moving on to number 3, Battle for Atlantis. Preseason, I had it number 2. I now have it number 3. I really like the tournament that jumped it. So, but it's still a good tournament. I think it's a little bit top heavy. A lot of intriguing power conference teams. As you can see, there is multiple Big 12 teams in West Virginia and Arizona. Not that might not matter a whole bunch. This one is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Thanksgiving week, so they will be playing on Thanksgiving. This one, as always, is in Nassau, Bahamas, at the Atlantis Resort. I have the team's power ranked. I think Gonzaga is far and away the best team here. I think Arizona is kind of in a class to their own, and then Indiana is kind of in a class to their own. But I think Arizona and Indiana are pretty close. Definitely closer than either of them are with Gonzaga. And then we have some interesting power conference teams in Louisville and Oklahoma, teams that are trying to get better and are supposed to be, especially Louisville, but results have maybe haven't shown that. Davidson, a team that has been really good in the A10, but shouldn't be this year. We'll see. Most compelling matchups. Pretty much anything with Gonzaga, you're not going to want to miss. I can say that right off the bat. Anything with Gonzaga is going to be a good. You're going to be watching at least one good team. Obviously, Gonzaga Arizona is a potential championship matchup, so that's probably the most compelling possible matchup. Is the two best teams? Who would have thought? Indiana and Louisville are also incredibly interesting to me because Indiana and Louisville both think that they're so it should be in the blue blood conversation, maybe like the second tier blue blood. But they both, Kentucky and Indiana, both love basketball. They've both had some down years as of late. Louisville hired a brand new head coach in the offseason. Indiana, you got to think Mike Woodson's on the hot seat. And both of these teams are supposed to be better. Indiana is a top 25 team. They definitely are better. Louisville, I think the jury is still out on. So I definitely would watch. I definitely think this is going to be a good time to gauge how good Indiana and Louisville are in the non-conference. Unfortunately for them, they play each other first round, so they might not get a chance to play a super big school or a high ranked school because if you lose in the first round, you automatically get sent to the losers bracket, and usually the losers bracket isn't as good as the winners bracket for obvious reasons. I also want to see where Oklahoma and Providence stand. Providence is a big question mark. I think they could be good, they could be bad, and I don't really know. So this tournament could be a judge for that. And Oklahoma, I think, is a team that's in the middle to the back of the SEC, but they could be a top 8 SEC team, which I guess would be top half. So again, this is kind of their first real non-conference test for them. Players to watch, I think Mackenzie Mbako is the best player in this entire tournament. Big recruit. I think he was a pretty big get for Indiana. He's been pretty darn good to start the season. And leading scorer and has NBA lottery pick written all over them, in my opinion. He shoots the ball well, scores well, rebounds well, everything you want out of he's kind of that stretch four 3 player. I don't think they shouldn't play him at center a whole lot, in my opinion. So, and then we have the Gonzaga players. We'll talk about all of them as a group. Graham Ike, Ryan Nembhard, and that's it. Probably a little bit disrespectful for Gonzaga. They probably have 3 or 4 of the top 12 players, but I wanted to give love to some other schools. Nembhard is averaging a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Incredible player. He's been in college for a long time. He knows how to win. Graham Ike, same way. He's a good scorer. He's was on some preseason All-American list, at least that I saw for a reason. Nembhard and Ike are 2 of the big 3 for Gonzaga. Definitely are a big part of making sure this team goes. Jalen Moore for Oklahoma, an elite scorer. I want to see if he can hit that 20-point per game mark. He's well over it right now. Anytime you have an elite scorer, it's fun to watch. And if Jalen Moore gets hot, Oklahoma could make a run in this tournament. Caleb Love and Jane Bradley, 2 guys for Arizona. Caleb Love was preseason All-American. He's an All-American last year. He's been in college basketball for a long time. Made some big shots. Made the national championship game with North Carolina. Not off to a great start this season. I want to see if he can rebound with this new Arizona team. Jaden Bradley right now is their leading scorer, another guard. I want to see how Caleb Love and Jalen Bradley grow. I want to see if they can get chemistry together. And the last guy I'm going to mention, because some of these, well, maybe not last guy I'm going to mention, Rain Smith from Louisville. He came with head coach Pat Kelsey from Charleston. Charleston under Pat Kelsey was one of the best and most consistent small school programs. They were always flirting around with the tournament. When they got there, they were good. I mean, Alabama made the Final Four last year, and Charleston was with them for a large majority of that game. Rean Smith can shoot. He needs to be good for Louisville, taking the step up. I want to see how he plays against these uh, power conference opponents, if he can still be the same scorer he was at Charleston. And I think most of the signs point to yes. Tucker DeVry is doing the same thing, came with his coach from Drake. The leader of that team needs to be a big scorer. And then I put Connor Cochera and Reed Bailey here for David. They're both Davidson, both good scorers. Both are going to be important if this team wants to have success. And just because I haven't mentioned a moment, and same thing for Providence. I mean, Connor Cochera and Bentley Joseph are kind of like in the same boat for me in this tournament. Definitely want to keep an eye on them. And then Omar Ballo, the transfer into Indiana, picked Indiana over a couple of other big name schools. He's going to have to be big for Indiana, especially in the paint, for them to have a chance at this tournament. How do I see this shaking out? Well, I think 3 of the top 5 schools in this tournament are all in the top half. So for Arizona, it gives them a pretty easy path to the championship in my mind. And for Oklahoma, they're one win away from a championship berth. But I think Gonzaga and Louisville Gonzaga and Indiana probably play each other. I think the winner of Louisville and Indiana wins the losers bracket, um, which is a kind of funny thing to say. That means you finish 5th place, whoop-de-doo, I guess. But that still might give you a chance at some non-conference wins. Gonzaga I think, wins this whole thing against Arizona. Those are the 2 best teams. I think Indiana gives Gonzaga a run for their money. And I think that Indiana probably finishes 3rd place, because Indiana is going to be in the semis against, assuming Arizona wins, the winner of Providence, Oklahoma, and I think Indiana's better than them. So I think this goes Gonzaga, Arizona, Indiana, top 3. Anyway, definitely some interesting storylines. Maybe not some star power as the last 2 tournaments. So let's get into the second best tournament in my eyes. Number 2 tournament, the Players Era Impact Festival. This is going to be the Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then that Saturday, which is the 30th. So kind of interesting that the round robin play section will be before Thanksgiving. Then they're going to take a couple of days off before determining who wins the championship and all that kind of stuff. You can see some big programs in this, in Houston, Alabama, and Creighton. Teams with good head coaches that have been around for a while. A&M is good this year. Rutgers is good this year. San Diego State University, that's what SDSU is. They've been around for a while. They're part of that Mountain West part of the Mountain West Conference that makes that conference so good as a mid-major. They've also are only 2 years removed from a Final Four berth. And then Oregon, they've been up and down. I don't think they're going to be as good this year. And Notre Dame, we'll see what they look like under year 2 of a new head coach with Micah Shrewsbury. The most compelling matchups, not unlike all of our previous tournaments, until the teams play the games, every matchup is possible if you get the right sequence of results. Because of the format that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, not every single matchup is possible. So I had to do a little bit of extra work when looking at the most compelling matchups. But as you can see here, it's chocked full of them. Houston, Alabama, that one is a guaranteed matchup. 2 preseason, I believe that was preseason 2 and preseason 3. If you for however much stock you take into that, they're both still top 10, but they're not top 3 anymore because they've both have taken a loss. Creighton, and A&M, that's another top 10, top 15 matchup. Definitely top 15, borderline top 10 teams at the end of the year, but both of those teams have at least 1 star, some good star power. Rutgers and Alabama. Everybody wants to see Rutgers. They have two phenomenal freshman guards that are supposed to be playing in the NBA next year that can score. Alabama has some good defensive guards and some good guards themselves. I don't need to keep talking about it. I mean, you can see all these possible matchups: Houston Creighton, Alabama Creighton, Houston A&M, Alabama A&M, which would be really funny because they're both in the SEC and they'd be playing a conference opponent as a non-conference. And then Rutgers A&M. All of these are just great options for matchups and are incredibly exciting. Highly recommend everybody checks out this tournament in Las Vegas. Let's get into some of the players to watch. Ryan Kalkbrenner and Mark Sears are two of the best players in the country. I had them both as preseason first team All-Americans. Mark Sears is a Naismith Player of the Year candidate, and right now Kalkbrenner is playing like one. Those are two phenomenal players. Everybody needs to keep an eye on. LJ Cryer and Wade Taylor maybe aren't on that same level, but they're both very, very good. Cryer, the face of that Houston team, scores the ball a little bit. Great defense. You can't play for Houston if you don't play defense. Wade Taylor was a great scorer and led Texas A&M last year. I think he's back this year and wants to lead them further into the tournament. Then we get the Rutgers freshmen, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, elite scorers. Hopefully Ace Bailey is healthy. He's only played one game, dealing with some injuries. Hopefully he's healthy for this tournament, because this tournament needs him to play, I think. Two just all-star freshmen, both guards, both on the court at the same time, both can put points up. Those Rutgers guards are going to be fun to watch. Now we're going to get into some guys who maybe aren't as well known. You know, those top six incredibly big names coming into the season that are well known about. But a guy like Marcus Burton for Notre Dame, it felt like their whole team at points last year. He's back this year. He's their leading scorer, great getting into the paint, can shoot the ball a little bit. Notre Dame wants to take a step forward, and if they are, it's going to be on the back of Marcus Burton. I think Notre Dame's going to be outgunned in a lot of these games that they play, but Marcus Burton is not going to be scared of anybody. He has 1 year of power conference basketball under his belt. It's really going to be a matter of, can he get help? Nate Biddle, Oregon's main player, their main scorer, their big guy. He's kind of in the similar boat as Burton. I think he's going to have some pretty big games if they want to win, unless somebody comes out of nowhere to help him out. Nick Boyd, familiarity playing big schools. He's been at San Diego State. Again, typical Mountain West players. I really don't know how to explain what I mean by that. But I really sometimes enjoy watching them, even though I think and then sometimes I really don't like watching the Mountain West. I have an interesting relationship with. Grant Nelson beat the Matt. I don't want to say single-handedly, but I would say he's the number one reason, especially in the second half, that Alabama made it to the Final Four, beating and the main reason why they beat North Carolina in the Sweet 16. They had that big come from behind win against against a number one seed. Grant Nelson is back. As a big, he can do a little bit of everything: score on the inside, rebound, shoot the ball, and he's always a fun time to watch. He's not afraid to let you know that he's good either. And then Juwan Roberts and Stephen Ashworth are both, I don't want to say second fiddle, but like they're both the kind of the accompaniment to the star and they both can take over games if they need to, but they just don't normally need to. So I definitely recommend watching both of those guys as number twos on top teams in the country. So this is what I'm talking about by this is weird. It's not the typical tournament format. It is 2 groups of 4, the Impact group and the Power group. And in those groups, you play 2 games instead of playing all 3 teams. And then the one seed, the best, you play the same seed on the other side. And the same seed on the other side means whoever wins the ones will be champion. As you can see, reminder, I've been trying to update you on the networks. This is another non-ESPN tournament. It is TBS, Max, True TV, TNT, right? So the big HBO Turner Sports are combining for this one. As you can see, I think that while I think Notre Dame is the worst team in the tournament, I think that the Impact group is still better because Houston and Alabama, I think, are the 2 best teams. And I think Rutgers is the 4th or 5th best team. So they have a lot of the top teams in the tournament. Like I said, we're guaranteed the Houston Alabama matchup. Uh, it is kind of sad that we will not see Rutgers versus Houston because Houston has a very good defense and very good defensive guards. Rutgers has two young, really good scoring guards, and I really would have liked to see that matchup. But under this format, it is impossible because they don't play each other during round robin play. I guess it shouldn't be considered complete round robin, but I digress. And then the power group, I'm so happy they're giving us Texas A&M Creighton because that's the best possible matchup in that group. We'll get to see how Oregon stands up against some good teams. Oregon maybe they're a little bit lucky for dodging Creighton, and then San Diego State. I think they're probably better than Oregon. We'll see. Again, because this is in Vegas, a lot of the games are a little bit late at night. Have fun staying up until 12:30 if you want to watch all the games, at least on Wednesday. Who do I think wins? That's tough. Houston and Alabama and Creighton, I think, are the three best teams. I think the winner of Houston and Alabama probably goes undefeated, although Rutgers could very well beat Alabama. Mark Sears is a great defensive guard. But there's two guards on Rutgers you have to watch out for. I just think Alabama's experience is going to win them. So I think the winner of Alabama and Houston will be the Impact 1 seed, just like I think the winner of Texas A&M Creighton will be the 1 seed in the power group. I think that's your top four, though. Houston, Alabama, A&M, Creighton. I think Rutgers finishes 5th. And after that, Notre Dame last. And then Oregon and San Diego State in 6th and 7th, I guess. But again, unfortunately, we can't. It's not possible to see every team, but we're guaranteed so many good matchups already, and that impact seed versus power seed for first place is going to be so fun to watch. And I think even the third place game is going to be super fun. And San Diego State Rutgers for 5th doesn't sound too bad either. So definitely keep an eye on this tournament. It's unconventional in its format, but I still don't think it's too difficult to follow. And last but certainly not least, the best tournament in my eyes for Feast Week, the Maui Invitational. It is the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And obviously, it's the Maui Invitational. It's played in Maui. This is another ESPN tournament. And we have 4 top 10 teams, 4 championship contenders coming into the year in this, and UConn, Auburn, UNC, and Iowa State. Michigan State is always pretty darn good under Izzo. They're always going to be in tournament contention. They're always pretty much always going to be in the tournament. Michigan State didn't look bad against Kansas the other night. Michigan State, even though they're not ranked, could give some of these teams some problems. Dayton, really good team in the A10. I am ecstatic to watch Dayton and VCU duke it out in the A10 the remainder of this year. That's going to be a fun battle to watch. I think both of those teams could be good enough to make the A10 a multi-bid conference. Memphis also, I think it's going to come down to how fast they can coalesce, how good of a coach Penny Hardaway is, which maybe the jury's still out on that one. But Memphis has some really good transfers in. That team can be really good. I don't think they're quite there yet, though. And then Colorado, I think, is the worst team in this. They're not really known for basketball. They haven't really haven't done a whole lot in a while. So good to see Colorado here, but kind of like Notre Dame in the last tournament, I don't see them making a run here. Most compelling matchups: UConn versus pretty much anybody. I mean, UConn, back-to-back national champs. They're trying to three-peat. They have a good team. They lost some important pieces from last year, but they still have some good guys on that team. And really, until somebody beats them, you can't count them out, because when you're back-to-back champs, and for my mind, you're the best team in the country regardless, because until somebody can beat you, they can't say they're good. Iowa State, very good defensive team. I'm interested to see how well they score against some of the top teams, but they're probably they're definitely top 5. They might be the best defensive team in the country. So seeing them against Auburn or UNC, teams that like to score a lot of points and get up and down, would be a fun contrast in styles. UNC versus Auburn, that has big time players written all over it. It has high scoring written all over it. And then Michigan State against some of these teams, just to see. Michigan State played Kansas close. Can they beat UConn? Can they beat UNC? Michigan State could be a dark horse in this tournament. Players to watch, and wow, there's a lot here. Johnny Broome, early on, looks like the best, maybe definitely looks like the best power forward in the country. Looks like one of the best players in the country, scoring the ball well, rebounding. He has top 5 pick almost locked up, it seems like, and for good reason. Alex Karaban, probably the most important piece that remains from that championship team. They lost a lot of players. They lost Spencer. They lost Castle. They lost Klingon. But Karaban was a good player for him last year. He can shoot the ball, do a little bit of everything. I digress. Alex Karaban, great player from UConn. He's going to have to be great this season for them to three-peat. But again, he also has an insane head coach, so we'll see. I'm going to talk about the UNC guards next. RJ Davis, preseason All-American Player of the Year candidate. It was the ACC Player of the Year last year. Off to a little bit of a slow start. He still is averaging nearly 18 a game, but his 3-point numbers are super low. His field goal percentage is low. He's having to take a lot of shots. He's having to score a lot from the free throw line. And UNC, I think, is much more talented, especially at the guard position this year than they were last year. So you can make an argument he doesn't need that many shots and that they should be on the other guys, especially if he's not hitting. I do think RJ Davis returns to the mean, and if he returns to the mean, that could mean he's in for a big Maui Invitational. If RJ Davis gets hot, UNC can win this thing. I think without him, without RJ Davis, they almost came back from 20 in Lawrence, Kansas against the number 1 team. That tells you how good that team is. If RJ Davis makes like 1 or 2 more shots, they win that game. That tells you how good the team is without RJ Davis. If RJ Davis starts playing to his capability, UNC could very well win this whole tournament. Elliot Cadeau has taken a massive step up. He's averaging 17 points, 8 assists a game. Phenomenal numbers. He looks like he's shooting the ball better. He's more confident, making some great passes. This up-tempo UNC, higher tempo UNC team definitely loves Elliot Cadeau running the show, and maybe that's why RJ Davis is struggling a little bit because he doesn't have the ball in his hands. UNC is a fun team. Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis are a great backcourt. A little bit worried about them defensively because they are small, but they seem like they're able to put up a good fight against some bigger guards. PJ Haggerty, the transfer from Memphis, is averaging a gazillion points right now. He's going to need to keep scoring for Memphis to win games in this tournament. And I think he's very capable of it. Again, I think Memphis has a high ceiling but a low floor, and I think if they play closer to their ceiling, they could also upset the apple cart in this tournament. And that's good. And if they do, it'll be led by PJ Haggerty. Enoch Cheeks, all-name team this year. Phenomenal name. Good big man. Like I said, Dayton, pretty good team. They might surprise some people in this tournament. And with UNC's question marks in the paint at times, Enoch Cheeks could have a big game, which could maybe propel Dayton to an upset over UNC. I wouldn't put it past Dayton. I wouldn't put it past Enoch Cheeks, so keep a lookout there. Iowa State, Lipsey and Curtis Jones, 2 of their best scorers, probably their 2 best scorers. Both are really good defensively, especially Tamim Lipsey. I love his defense. There's a lot of great scorers in this tournament that they're going to be tasked with trying to shut down. And I think that's going to be one of the best storylines is how does Iowa State play defensively? I love their defense. How many games can their defense maybe not even like hold scores down, but just make them be inefficient enough where Iowa State can get the win? Jaden Akins from Michigan State. I don't really have a lot to say. Great player. Does literally a little bit of everything. Scores the ball. He's going to have a big tournament if Michigan State wants to win. I didn't mention Liam McNeely. He's another big scorer. Can shoot the ball well. Him continuing to be a great player is going to be massive for UConn. And Andre Jakimovsky, foreign player for Colorado. He's their best player. Interested to see what he does against against some of these really good teams. It's really their first big test of the year. Let's see how he does. And Chaney Johnson for Auburn, another good player. This kind of the second scorer behind Broome. He's going to have to really make sure he's helping Broome out. Broome can't do it against himself against teams like UConn and Iowa State and UNC. So how much can Chaney Johnson help him out? Here's the bracket. I think UConn and all of these games are interesting. I think the least interesting first round game is Colorado, Michigan State. I think Michigan State wins that. Auburn, Iowa State is an incredible first round matchup. Contrast to styles, two very good teams, very good players. Auburn has had the bigger test so far, I would say. But Iowa State is experienced going back to last year. I have no idea who to pick for that game. It's so hard to read because it is still early. North Carolina, I have beaten Dayton, but I think that could be a single-digit game a lot closer than people think it is. Unfortunately, in some aspects, because this game is in Maui, if you want to watch all the games, you are going to the North Carolina Dayton at earliest is starting at 11:30. It could very well be closer to midnight if some of these games are close down the stretch. Really Auburn, Iowa State, because there is a gap between the first two and the second two. And I could see Auburn, Iowa State going the distance and being a little bit longer than it's supposed to. I want to lean Auburn just because they've had big tests so far, and I really, really like Johnny Broome. And even with Iowa State's defense, I don't know how they're going to slow him down. But it's so hard for me to pick against Iowa State, a team that did it last year. I think UConn is the slight favorite to win this, and I do think UConn is in the easier section. I know I said Michigan State is good, but UConn is the best team. The second, third, and fourth best teams are all on the other side of the bracket, and they're going to be beaten up on each other. I like UConn to win this, and then I think North Carolina should beat Dayton. That should put them no worse than third because I think they'll beat. Let's put it this way: the winner of Game 8 will be the third place team, I think. But this is such an essential tournament for a lot of these teams to try and pick up non-conference wins that are so important when it comes tournament time. And there's a lot of opportunities. We'll see what happens. Definitely watch the Maui Invitational. It's always good. It was phenomenal last year. I have a feeling it'll be the same this year. So here we go. I have just some summary here. I gave you my champs. I'm not going to read them off again, but here you can see my predicted champion for each of them. UConn, Alabama, Gonzaga, Baylor, Miami, Purdue, Florida, Texas Tech. On the left here, I have each conference and how many teams they have playing in the top 8. A lot of these conferences, especially the power ones, do have every single one of their teams in some form of a feast week or multi-team event, but not all of them are as big as these. Big 12 and SEC both have 9. It's funny, they have 9, but I don't think either of those conferences are in every single tournament I mentioned. The ACC has 8, one team in all of the conferences, I think, or one team in all of these tournaments. I think they're the only team that has that. Big 10 is in 6, which is honestly kind of disappointing. The Big 10 wants to be a basketball conference. They want to be a top basketball conference. Why do you only have 6 teams in these 8 tournaments? And they're only in 4 or 5 of them because there is at least one where they have multiple teams. That's kind of disappointing to me, especially with where the Big 10 views themselves. Big East has 5, but the 5 team they're in some of the larger ones for sure. The A10 has 4 teams. The Atlantic 10, the little old Atlantic 10, has 4 teams playing in these tournaments. Who would have thought? The American Athletic Conference has 3, and I don't know if any of them are going to threaten winning. Memphis is probably the best out of the 3 American teams mentioned, but they're also in the hardest tournament. Then the Mountain West with San Diego State and Nevada. The West Coast Conference is Gonzaga. They pretty much have been carrying that conference on their shoulders for a long time. A little bit of St. Mary's here and there. And then the Missouri Valley Conference with Drake. I have the conferences power rated. Some of this is an update because some of it is a little bit different than what I had at the beginning of the year. But based on the results so far, this could obviously change after Feast Week. These the right column is where I have the teams ranked. And so Big 12 first, SEC second, ACC third, Big East fourth, Big 10 fifth. Those are also my top 5 conferences overall. Mountain West, West Coast Conference, purely because of Gonzaga. I want to put the A10 above them, but Nobody in the A10 can beat Gonzaga consistently. Then the A10, who was definitely better than the American, and then the Missouri Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking time out of your week to come and listen. I hope you love college basketball as much as I do. Um, like I said, this is my favorite time of year. There's so many sports going on. Not only do you get to hang out with your family this holiday season, see family you may not have in a while, see friends you may not have in a while, you get to sit down and watch everybody's favorite pastime sports. There's a lot of them on. Highly recommend you check out these Feast Week tournaments because it's going to be more interesting than anything the NBA puts out. Obviously, football is still America's sport. I really, really hope you like this episode. Please keep coming back. Let me know in the comments any other college basketball ideas you guys want to see. If you haven't already, go check out my preview of college basketball season. It's still early, so there's still plenty in that preview that has yet to happen you can check out. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Those are the three biggest things you can do for me as a creator. Really any creator on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. That helps more people see the videos. It helps YouTube's algorithm. It helps get more eyes on the video, which is what I want. Follow me on X, as you can see my handle right there. Once again, thank you for listening. Everybody have a good week, or at least until the next episode. Peace out.